What is up, YouTube? It's Diamond back with another video, and today we're going to be reacting to 8 true creepy middle school horror stories. As you know, make sure to like, comment, share with your friends, and let's get right into the video.
This story takes place when I was about 12 to 13, around 2005-2006, when MSN was really big. I met a girl in my grade who hung around my group of friends, but I had only just met her. I'm going to call her Alice. She was a very overweight girl who got picked on a lot and apparently didn't have the best home life, so I tried to be nice to her even though she gave off a few red flags of not being the most stable person. Anyway, here's my story. It was a Friday after school and I was waiting for my bus to go to my dad's house for the weekend. My bus was one of the last to leave, and Alice comes up and starts talking to me and asks if I want to hang out with her at her grandparents' house. I told her I was going to my dad's, and my dad, myself, and my younger siblings were supposed to go see a movie that night. She is really insistent, and I eventually say I have to check with my dad. I call him from the office, and he surprisingly says yes, and tells me to be at Alice's at, I'll say like 7:30 or something, to pick me up for the movie. We walk around town a little bit and then go to her house, and she immediately goes to her laptop and signs into MSN with me sitting next to her. I ask her who some people on the list are because I recognize next to none of the people on it. She tells me she has a lot of friends online, which at the time I thought was super weird. Instantly, a bunch of people start messaging her, and in particular one guy I would just call James. I don't remember his real name. His personal message script says something to the effect of, "I love my sexy babe Alice," and I get even more weirded out. She says this guy is her boyfriend who is like 16 and she hasn't met him, but apparently lives just a few hours away. She tells him she is hanging out with a friend, and he says something like, "Oh, turn on your webcam, I want to see if I know her." I am uncomfortable with it, but I didn't know her well enough to protest, so she turns it on, but he doesn't turn on his. He starts really creeping me out by saying things like, "Oh, your friend is hot as you are. Ew," and telling me I look hot and should take off my sweater. He makes weird passes like we should make out and stuff like that, and innuendos about a threesome, which I don't really understand at the time. I ask why he doesn't turn on his webcam, and she says it's because he doesn't have one, and I start getting even more suspicious. I tell her that I want to get off the computer and go hang out outside and play with her rabbit. She tells him we have to go, and he starts getting really angry at her and obviously manipulating her into staying on. I think he is an incredible creep, so I go outside alone and pet her rabbit in its little enclosure, and she eventually comes outside. She tells me they got into a fight but made up, and he is coming to finally visit her on Friday and wants us all to hang out, even though I never directly spoke to him and she isn't a good friend. So many red flags going off as a middle schooler.
Yeah.
I brush it off, and we have an uneventful evening until my dad comes and picks me up. Sunday, when I get back to my mom's place, I go on MSN and have a friend request from someone I don't know. I assume it is a friend from school. The email seemed very middle school-esque, so I added it. As soon as I do, a window opens and says something like, "Hey, sexy girl." I ask who it is, and sure enough, it is James. I say I have to go and just block him. Monday at school, Alice is talking to me at lunch and says he really liked me and he's coming Friday for sure, and asks if we were still in for all hanging out. I make up some excuse about having to go to my dad's again on the bus, and she drops it. I believe it was the following Friday our school went into lockdown. Basically, they lock everyone into their classrooms, and we turn off the lights and can't leave until it comes over the PA it is all clear. Everyone assumes it is a drill, and we do work quietly at our desks and talk. The lockdown lasts most of the period before it is over. In between the next class, a vice principal grabs me outside of class and tells me to come with him to the office. I follow him, and he doesn't talk until we get where the guidance counselor is sitting there with a female officer. I'm like, what's going on? They just say they have a few things to ask me, but I can call my parents if I want to. I have no idea what it is all about, and I tell them no. The vice principal asks if I know Alice, and I say yes. He asks if I know a guy named James, and I say no, but Alice does. He tells me the guy wasn't really 16 years old, but a 40-something-year-old guy whose name was Tom. I was freaked out, but I told them I just knew he was supposed to meet her after school, and that was all, and they let me go. The cop just kind of sat there and took notes. I didn't know much about it for a while, but I pieced it together eventually, though, what Alice had said about and other kids who were at the front of the school when he showed up. Apparently the guy showed up saying he was her uncle and it was an emergency. The receptionist in the office was suspicious to ask for proof, as he wasn't on the list of emergency contacts, I think, and of course he didn't have any. She called the principal out, and the guy was irate, demanding he send her down. He got even more angry and said that I knew who he was and that I could vouch for him, something to that effect. They refused and asked him to leave. He won't, so they call the cops and lock down the school, and he just goes nuts in the office apparently. I'm really scared to think about what could have happened to that girl. He knew what school she went to, and my best guess is that he got impatient to do whatever to her. I don't think he was charged because he was clearly mentally unstable. Shortly after, I cut ties with Alice because she was into a lot of risky behaviors, even after that.
What should you talk to?
I was 12 years old, circa 2002, and I was walking home from school around 3 p.m. It was sunny and bright, and I had no reason to think that my walk home was going to be any different than it had ever been. I lived about 1 mile away from my middle school. The way home was very safe. I knew about 10 people who lived along the way, and there were many mom and pop shops that peppered the path home. It was also broad daylight on a somewhat crowded street for a beach town suburb. I had just passed an insurance office and convenience store when I noticed a homeless man on the corner. This wasn't rare for my part of town, where many aging hippies and burnouts live by the shore and ask for handouts during the day. 90% of these men are harmless. They don't even yell. They just ask for change and shrug if you say no. Being naive and used to my safe walk home, I paid no attention to the man other than to utter a soft, casual hello as I walked by. He didn't seem to hear me. As I'm walking by and up the hill behind him, I hear footsteps behind me and guttural ramblings. It sounded like he was trying to get my attention, but I knew enough not to engage him. I had no money and he seemed drunk. I quickened my pace. My heart rate went up from fear, and I had hoped that my speed would deter him. I was already at least 50 feet in front of him uphill, but he only kept going faster. Finally, I was at a jog and he was catching up. I had a heavy backpack and sandals, so I couldn't run. He grabbed my arm and spun me around. I could smell weed and alcohol on his breath. He pushed me into the bushes by an apartment complex, and right before he was going to lean in, a car screeched by on the curb and yelled, "Get off!" He got up confused, and I took the moment of respite to get out of the bushes and run to the curb. The woman behind the wheel opened her passenger's door and asked me to get in. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise. Just get away from that creep." I got in. She sped off and told me to call the police as soon as I got home. My mom wouldn't be home until 7 p.m., so all I could do was tell my neighbor, who we were supposed to go to if anything happened, and call. The dispatcher took down all my information pretty easily. I was so shocked and full of adrenaline I hadn't cried or broken down yet, and almost felt like I was watching everything happen. About an hour later, I got a call back from the police telling me that they had found the guy who had attacked me and asked if they could come by my house to get my statement. I said I'd have to wait until my mom came from picking up my sister, but really from her job 1 hour away. They said I could wait until the next day. The man they caught was a notorious drunk around the area. He had been mostly harmless, but recently had gotten into hard drugs like crystal meth, which had caused him to get more violent and commit petty thefts around the neighborhood. This was the first time he had tried anything dangerous. This encounter happened to my mom when she was in middle school in the early 70s. Her family lived outside of town, so she rode the bus to and from school. She was in 6th grade and had a boyfriend who also rode her bus. They would sit together and hold hands, but they were not inappropriate with their interactions. The bus driver took notice of their relationship and started to make comments to them. He'd asked if they kissed a lot, if they tongued, and even once asked if he sniffed her underwear. Not knowing what to do, they did their best to ignore him. On the last day of school, the bus route went as usual, except the driver skipped my mom's stop. When he stopped at the next house, several miles away, she tried to get off the bus with that girl. The kids all knew each other pretty well and were friends. The driver stopped her and made her go sit back down. Every stop after that, she'd try to get off of the bus, and he'd tell her to go sit back down until she was the last one left on the bus. She was already terrified and crying. She said that she didn't remember if she was praying out loud or not, but she remembers just begging for an idea of how to get away. The driver told her to move to the front of the bus right beside his seat. Instead, she picked up her things, moved to the very last seat. On her way, she set her books and things in the middle of the aisle, hoping that if he did come after her, he would be slowed down. He finally started back down her road towards her house, but turned off onto a dirt road leading back to some brush. She finally decided that if he even slowed down enough, she was going out the back emergency door.
That's right.
Run for it. As he turned onto another dirt road deeper into the brush, she happened to glance out the back window to see her dad and her older brother, he was an adult, in their truck following behind. She shouted up to the driver, "You better stop this bus right now. That's my dad behind the bus." He stopped the bus and opened the doors for her to get off, but she was too scared to move. Within a few seconds, her dad was on the bus, standing right up next to the driver so that she could walk around behind him. He told her to get into the truck with her brother. As she sat in the truck, she could see her dad through the back window of the bus just going off on this guy. Verbally, unfortunately. When her dad got back into the truck, he hugged her like never before, and she just lost it crying. She knew that if her dad was scared, she'd just escaped with her life. Now this wasn't just a coincidence that her dad had found her. Every kid who got off the bus after they missed my mom stopped had gone home and told their parents that the driver wouldn't let her off the bus, and that she was really scared and crying. The parents all called my grandparents to let them know the stories that they were getting. My grandparents never reported the incidents to the police or the school, but they did talk to the owner of the bus company, and they never saw that bus guy driving again. My mom believes that they didn't report it to the police because her dad had threatened the driver's life, and he would in turn report that to the police. My grandfather went onto his grave without ever revealing what he said to that bus driver. Several years later, my mother was talking with her mother-in-law, we'll call her Grandma C, about Grandma C's cousin, who was married to a guy from my mom's hometown. Grandma C was telling her that this guy was in prison for impregnating his 14-year-old stepdaughter. As an off-the-cuff remark, she mentioned that he used to drive a school bus in the district when my mom went to school. My mom almost passed out at this news. She asked his name and was given the name of the bus driver who abducted her all those years ago.
Sorry, I had to leave, guys. Somebody's at the door, so I had to go get it.
I had the displeasure of meeting this individual while attending the same middle school as him and sharing a few classes, one of them being home economics. I really liked that class, except for the part where this kid would throw sewing needles at me. Not funny and not safe.
Sewing
I lost an eyeball because of this stupid idiot.
Yes, you could have.
I wasn't the best looking kid or the most popular, but I did blossom later on in high school. And just because I was an awkward fatty with glasses didn't give him the right to bully me anyways. Moving on now to high school, like I said, I blossomed and had developed some type of self-esteem by that time. I was getting male attention that I didn't get before, and one day this guy shows up in my inbox on Facebook to tell me how attractive he thought that I was, and wondering if we could get together. Of course I declined, not only because he had been a jerk to me a few years earlier, but because he came off as a creep who would not take a solid no for an answer. Every day he would message me and get ignored or a sarcastic response depending on how I was feeling at the time. It was quite annoying with his persistence. I had moved to a different city and went to a different high school, so I luckily didn't see him ever. I moved due to my mom remarrying, not because of him. Then one day my sister mentions an attack on a girl she was classmates with. The girl had been attacked by her friends and a few familiar names that my sister and I knew from having lived in that area, and apparently they, quote-unquote, had their way with her. I've gone to school with them, and the name that stood out the most was his, as he had been trying to get with me to meet up with him for a few months, and thankfully, I had been smart enough to let him know he was barking up the wrong tree. I went to middle school at a private school where the middle and high school was comprised of only 30 students.
Oh my,
what is this thing on the screen? From my middle school team was a soft-spoken man that volunteered for many of our school functions. I assume this is due to the fact that he had
What
two
is this on
adopted
the
sons that
screen?
attended my school.
Dude, this
One
got
was a
rocked
grade
with a
older
bat.
and one was a couple of grades below me. I didn't really remember him at all until I graduated high school.
Oh my god. And the door just closed by itself.
From a number I didn't recognize. Still don't know how he got my number. It turns out to be that this man was wishing me a happy graduation. I at first thought that he was just friendly, but then he called back insisting on taking me for a steak dinner. I tried to politely decline, but he began texting me and calling me non-stop. This made me really uncomfortable, and so I sternly requested he leave me be. A couple of years later, I am a sophomore in college and I received this email. Dear me, I shall try one last time, though not to bother, but to seek a friendship that I can feel can work and benefit us both. It seems that most people pass through their lives and leave a vacant mark, soon to be forgotten or, if thought of, just a passing blip that does not linger. However then, there are those who leave their mark as if to say, I am somebody of value. I want to make a difference. I'm not sure where or how I so tragically messed up in trying to recapture a friendship that I felt important. Not wanting anything more or anything less, but a friendship of value and a meaning that would be of importance to two lives. Long ago, as a soccer coach, there was a young man of intrigue on my team. His intelligence shone through his skills on the soccer field, and there was something there, something that sparked the thought of value. It was difficult to define, harder still to understand. Nonetheless, that young man left a mark that would stay in the portals of my mind. Typically, society does not take kindly to a grown married man taking up a friendship with a young man with a family of his own. Innocent, of course, respectfully even more, but still looked at with this inevitable stink eye. Maybe one day the paths of this coach and team member will cross again. Most of the friendships that I value in my life have come along in the most unusual way. For instance, the 19-year-old female classmate at mortuary school that just seemed to fit under my wing. I was the one that was not interested in hitting on her, just establishing a friendship that could last for years to come. Or perhaps the 93-year-old lady in the nursing home who was hungry for the company of someone that enjoyed listening to her stories of times gone by. The 7-year-old author from Casey County that immediately gave a feeling of commonality that was uncovered after just a few dinners and glasses of Merlot. A young friend of a son who, lacking a father figure, just wanted respect from a generation that was not willing to give it. I could go on and on. I have found that the old saying that you can't pick your family, however, you can pick your friends is of tremendous value in my life. Souls are waiting around every corner or in the most bizarre places, but when you encounter them, the rewards are endless. What does all this mean? For you, perhaps nothing, or maybe, just maybe, something. This is for you to decide. Nature may have already taken its course, but I try not to give up on anything that I consider of value in my life or the lives of others. Best regards, him. I responded extremely curtly and notified this man that I forward the email to my father, attorney at law. I don't like to speculate, but considering the nature of the adoption of the demeanor and behavior of his sons growing up, as well as their age approximately to me, I really worry about their upbringing. I never heard from this man since, but my younger sister said one of her male friends has had similar interactions with him. To add to the creepiness, this man is a mortician in my county. I would like to add a bit more context to this story. I would receive multiple voicemails a day of this man telling me things like, I want to take you out to a big steak dinner. Anything you want. We can even share some wine at my house before, or I don't know what I'm doing wrong and why you were pushing me away. I think we can truly get along great. Now, I agree. At first I thought this man was simply reaching out to me in a friendly manner, but the persistence after being nicely turned down is what raised red flags. After starting college, I received a new phone number as well as a new email address. Not for this reason, but because I got my own phone plan and started university with a new email. My second year here, he tracked down both informations again. This is when he sent this letter as well as started the calls again. It was only after telling the man that I forwarded his email to my father, who happened to be an attorney, that he left me alone. A few months later, the county prosecutor contacted me requesting information. When I recalled this story, I did a quick Google search of his email and name and found at least 2 obituaries of 14 and 15-year-old boys that live in different states from him where he posts on the online funeral page expressing condolences. I won't add his exact wording or the sites because I don't want to reveal his identity, but both were identical and went something like this. Parents, may God give you strength. I feel like I have gotten to know your son through the Facebook posts and messages we have shared, and have grown to love him and have plenty of respect for him. My heart is aching. I love you. Insert son's name. It is speculative, but it sounds as if he doesn't personally know these boys, and the similar wording he uses to the letter he sent me further raises red flags. And lastly, I want to reiterate that I barely knew this man. We never had an opportunity to be alone and develop some bond that he refers to. He was the assistant coach for my middle school soccer team. I rarely even made it on the field as I was in the 6th grade and it was a middle school team. It was not as if he was some teacher I saw every day, and I sincerely left an impression on him. I didn't even remember he existed until the calls and emails started. In middle school, we had a campus security guard named Mr. Cole. He was a pudgy white guy somewhere in his 30s, not much hair. From what I remember, he was pretty social with most of the kids.
Trying to hit him
really
with
friendly,
the bat.
joked around with us, etc. I was one of the kids who would talk to him often because he was just a really cool guy. He always seemed a little off, but since I was a social reject with not many friends, I figured I probably seemed off too. I would lightly one-arm hug any of the teachers or staff I felt comfortable with. I assume now because they were the only ones who made me feel accepted. This most likely made me a bit naive. He would usually try to bear hug me. Looking back on this, it was creepy at the time. It was whatever. But I would do my awkward half one-arm hug and scurry away. Fast forward. I'm a sophomore in high school now, and someone I've kept in contact with once in a blue moon since elementary school emails me a news article. Mr. Cole had changed careers since I'd left middle school. He had become the junior varsity girls basketball team coach at some school about 20 or 30 minutes away. Unfortunately, the article wasn't about him changing jobs. He was being arrested because he was having sexual relations with a few of his 14 to 15-year-old students on the team. Only one of them had given consent. Though being a minor, it was still considered illegal. This creeps me out terribly because he is our security guard. At middle school age, this is someone who you trust to keep you safe. When I read the article, I felt sick and horrified that I had conversations with him. I'd even hugged this man.
Thank you guys for watching. I will try to make a part 2 to this story. I think we're on story 6 or 5 right now. But make sure to like, subscribe, share. The link of this video will be in the description down below. As always, stay tuned for the next video. Peace.